Boris Morgan is sprinting through Hartsfield-Jackson Airport like his life depends on it, his sneakers squelching on rain-soaked concrete. Atlanta's summer storm has turned his carefully styled hair into a disaster, his white shirt clinging to his frame, and worst of all, his suppressants are wearing off early. He can feel the telltale warmth creeping up his spine, that dangerous flutter in his stomach that means his heat is coming 3 days ahead of schedule. His phone buzzes. Your ride has been cancelled. No, Boris hisses, panic spiking sharp enough that he knows other Omegas within 20 feet can probably smell it. He's supposed to be at his dorm, locked down with supplies, not stranded at the airport departure terminal with alphas everywhere. That's when he sees it, a sleek black Mercedes S-Class idling at the curb, license plate ending in the same 4 digits as his old confirmation code. He doesn't think. He just moves. Boris wrenches the rear door open and throws himself inside, gasping, "Thank God, I thought you." The words die in his throat. The man in the driver's seat turns around slowly, and Boris's hindbrain does something it's never done before. It goes completely, utterly silent. Then it screams. This isn't a beta rideshare driver. This is an alpha, and not just any alpha. The man is devastating, sharp jawline, dark eyes that could cut glass, perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably costs more than Boris's entire student loan debt. His scent hits Boris like a physical force, sandalwood, steel, rain-soaked cedar, and something rich and dark that makes Boris's mouth go dry. Wrong car, the man says in English, his Korean accent precise, almost musical. His eyes track down to Boris's throat, then away, jaw tightening. Before Boris can scramble back out, 3 men in black tactical gear materialize around the vehicle, palms slamming against the windows. One yanks at Boris's door handle. Locked. The alpha's expression transforms from surprise to lethal in a heartbeat. He shifts forward, and his scent intensifies, a deliberate alpha warning that makes every Omega instinct in Boris's body scream submit and run simultaneously. "Theo Kim," one of the men shouts through the glass. "Is that an Omega? The chairman said you were unmated." Theo doesn't look away from Boris. His voice is low, commanding, and does something absolutely illegal to Boris's pulse. "Put your wrist out. Now." Boris's hand moves before his brain catches up. Theo's fingers close around his wrist, warm, firm, possessive, and then his thumb presses down hard on Boris's pulse point. The sensation is electric, overwhelming, and Boris gasps as Theo deliberately drags his scent glands across the delicate skin. It's not a bite. It's not a bond. But it's a claim, visible and undeniable, and Boris's entire body lights up like he's been plugged into a live wire. "His mine," Theo announces through the window, his voice carrying alpha authority that makes Boris's knees weak even though he's sitting down. "We're engaged. You can tell the chairman that his intel was wrong." The men outside hesitate. One pulls out a phone. After a tense 30 seconds, they step back from the vehicle, and the Mercedes purrs forward into Atlanta traffic. Boris is shaking. The scent mark burns on his wrist, not painfully, but there, impossible to ignore. He can smell himself now, rain and stress pheromones mixing with Theo's seed and steel scent in a way that makes his head spin. "I can explain," Theo says, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "You just scent marked me in front of witnesses." Boris's voice comes out higher than intended. "Do you have any idea what, alphas don't just, that's not." "I know." Theo's jaw tightens. "And I'm sorry. But if I hadn't, those men would have dragged you out of this car and interrogated you about why you were meeting with me in secret. My father's enemies don't ask politely." Boris presses back against the leather seat, trying to regulate his breathing. His heat is definitely coming early now, triggered by stress and the most potent alpha scent he's ever encountered. He has maybe 48 hours before he's completely compromised. "Who are you?" Boris manages. "Theo Kim. My father is Chairman Kim of Kim Tech Industries." Theo navigates through traffic with practiced ease, heading toward Buckhead. "And you are?" "Boris Morgan. I'm a student at Georgia State. Korean language and international business." Boris touches his marked wrist, wincing. "This is going to be visible for days. Everyone's going to think that you're spoken for." Theo glances back again, and there's something almost apologetic in those dark eyes. "Which, Temporarily, might not be the worst thing. How much do you know about chaebol families? Enough to know I just got pulled into something way above my pay grade. Theo's mouth twitches, almost a smile. Smart Omega. Don't. Boris's voice sharpens. I'm not anyone's smart Omega or good Omega, or whatever patronizing bullshit you're about to. I was going to say you're clearly intelligent and observant, Theo interrupts smoothly. And I need your help. The Mercedes pulls into an underground garage of one of Atlanta's most exclusive residential towers. Theo parks, kills the engine, and turns to face Boris fully for the first time. Up close, he's even more devastating. But there's tension in his shoulders, exhaustion around his eyes, and his scent, beneath the controlled alpha dominance, carries notes of stress that Boris recognizes all too well. My father wants me to marry within the chaebol circle, Theo says. A strategic merger with the daughter of his biggest competitor. She's an Omega from a powerful family, and the wedding is being fast-tracked. I've been looking for a way out for months. And I just fell into your lap. Boris's laugh is brittle. Literally. An existing bond is the only excuse my father will accept without destroying my career and cutting me off from the company I've spent 5 years trying to reform from the inside. Theo's gaze is steady, unflinching. I need you to pretend to be my fiancé for 1 week. Just until I can navigate the political fallout and find another solution. You're insane. I'm desperate. Theo pauses. And I'm willing to pay you $50,000. The number hangs in the air between them. Boris's student loan debt is $63,000. He's been working 2 jobs, skipping meals, rationing his suppressants because the good ones are expensive and his insurance barely covers the generics that make him nauseous. $50,000 would change his life. I can't go back to my apartment smelling like you, Boris says quietly. My roommates will ask questions. And I'm going into heat in less than 2 days. You can stay at my penthouse. Private room, your own bathroom, anything you need. Theo's voice softens. I'll arrange for a professional heat service if you want, or I can leave entirely. Your choice. No strings, no expectations beyond the public appearances. Boris closes his eyes. This is a terrible idea. This is possibly the worst decision he could make. But his bank account has $47 in it, his suppressants are failing, and is currently marked by an alpha billionaire who smells like every fantasy Boris has tried to suppress since he presented at 15. 1 week, Boris says. And if you try anything, without my explicit consent, I'm gone. Agreed. Theo extends his hand, formal and respectful. Thank you, Boris. They shake, and Boris pretends the contact doesn't send another shiver down his spine. The penthouse is obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook the Atlanta skyline, all glittering lights and storm clouds. Modern art pieces that probably cost more than Boris's childhood home. Furniture that looks like it belongs in a magazine spread. Everything is clean lines, muted colors, and expensive minimalism. Boris stands in the entrance, dripping rainwater onto marble floors, and feels like an absolute imposter. Guest room is down the hall, Theo says, shrugging off his suit jacket. Without it, he looks slightly less intimidating, though the way his dress shirt fits his shoulders does nothing to help Boris's pulse. I'll have Mrs. Chen bring up some clothes that might fit you. Food preferences? Allergies? I'm not picky. Boris's voice sounds small in this massive space. And you don't have to. You're doing me a massive favor. Theo meets his eyes. The least I can do is make sure you're comfortable. There's something genuine in his tone, something that doesn't match the cold alpha billionaire image. Theo moves to the kitchen, actual marble countertops, professional-grade appliances, and starts making tea without asking if Boris wants any. How does a Korean exchange student end up studying international business at Georgia State? Theo asks, his back to Boris as he works. How does a chaebol heir end up making his own tea? Theo glances over his shoulder, and this time the smile is real. Small, but real. Touché. Despite everything, the insanity of the situation, the scent mark burning on his wrist, the heat coiling in his gut, Boris feels the first crack in his defensive walls. Maybe this week won't be completely unbearable after all. The guest room is bigger than Boris's entire apartment. The bathroom has heated floors, a rainfall shower, and toiletries still in their packaging, expensive brands Boris has only seen in magazine ads. He strips off his rain-soaked clothes, catches sight of himself in the mirror, and freezes. The scent mark on his wrist is already darkening to a visible bruise, Theo's claim unmistakable even without the lingering scent. Boris touches it gently, and his body responds with a flutter of warmth that has nothing to do with the incoming heat and everything to do with the alpha currently making tea in the other room. "Get it together," he mutters to his reflection. "It's fake. It's temporary. It's $50,000. The shower helps. The water pressure is incredible, the temperature perfect, and for 10 blissful minutes Boris lets himself pretend this is normal. That he belongs in spaces like this. That an alpha like Theo Kim could want someone like him for real, not just as a convenient escape route. When he emerges in a cloud of steam, wrapped in a towel that's somehow both impossibly soft and probably costs more than his textbooks, he finds clothes laid out on the bed. Designer joggers, a plain black t-shirt, even unopened packages of boxer briefs in his exact size. Either Theo is very good at estimating, or he texted someone who is. Boris dresses quickly, hyper-aware that his heat is creeping closer. His skin feels too sensitive, his temperature slightly elevated. He needs to eat something, hydrate, maybe take the emergency suppressants he keeps in his bag. His bag. Which he left in the wrong car. Which means no wallet, no suppressants, no phone charger. Perfect, Boris sighs. He pads out to the living room barefoot and finds Theo talking quietly with an older Korean woman in a traditional hanbok. She's petite, silver-haired, and has the kind of face that suggests she's seen everything twice and wasn't impressed the first time. "Mrs. Chen," Theo says, switching to English seamlessly. "This is Boris Morgan. He'll be staying with us for the week." Mrs. Chen's eyes sweep over Boris with the calculated assessment of someone who spent decades reading people. Then her gaze snags on his wrist, the marked one, which Boris realizes too late has been unconsciously displaying. Her expression doesn't change, but something shifts in the air. "It's nice to meet you," Boris says, suddenly feeling like he's being X-rayed. "Likewise." Mrs. Chen's English is flawless, barely accented. She moves closer, and Boris catches her scent, bitter, neutral, with notes of jasmine tea and laundry soap. Comforting. Maternal. "You're soaked through. Let me see if those clothes fit properly." Before Boris can protest, she's lifting his wrist to check the sleeve length. Her thumb brushes across his inner wrist, just below the scent mark, and she goes completely still. Boris follows her gaze down. The crescent moon birthmark. He's had it his entire life, a small, perfect arc on his inner wrist, pale against his skin. His mom used to call it his lucky moon when he was little, said it meant he was meant for special things. Mrs. Chen's face has gone sheet white. "Mrs. Chen?" Theo's voice sharpens with concern. She doesn't answer. She's staring at Boris's wrist like she's seen a ghost, her fingers trembling where they still grip his arm. "I need," her voice cracks. She releases Boris abruptly, steps back. "Excuse me. One moment." She disappears down the hallway with quick, urgent steps that don't match her usual composed demeanor. Boris looks at Theo, bewildered. "Did I do something wrong?" "I don't know." Theo's frown deepens. I've never seen her react like that. Mrs. Chen's hands shake as she pulls up her tablet in the privacy of Theo's office. 20 years. It's been 20 years since she worked that shift at Mercy Hospital in Annapolis, Maryland. 20 years since she watched a young Omega mother scream in the maternity ward, since security footage showed a nurse who wasn't a nurse walking out with a newborn baby boy wrapped in a blue blanket. Baby Violet Morgan. 3 days old. Omega. Identifying marks, crescent moon birthmark on inner left wrist. Mrs. Chen had been the charge nurse that night. She'd held that baby, marveled at that perfect little birthmark, handed him to his exhausted mother who'd lost her alpha partner just months before. She'd testified at the trial, helped with the investigation, watched it go cold when the kidnapper vanished without a trace. She'd never forgotten that birthmark. Her fingers fly across the screen, pulling up archived news articles. The images are grainy. It was 2005, before smartphones, before social media made everything instantly viral. But there it is, the photo the police released. Baby Violet's tiny wrist, the crescent moon birthmark clear and unmistakable. Mrs. Chen pulls up a photo she just took of Boris. She'd snapped it instinctively when she saw the mark, her nursing training kicking in. The birthmarks are identical. Same size, same shape, same placement. Oh God, she whispers. She finds more articles. Leslie Morrison, that was the mother's name. She'd been 23, a single Omega parent, working 2 jobs to prepare for her baby's arrival. The grief in her eyes during those news interviews had haunted Mrs. Chen for years. There are more recent articles too. Leslie Morrison remarried 5 years ago, to an alpha named David Chen, no relation. She started a foundation for missing Omegas. She never stopped looking. And the baby she lost is currently standing in Theo's living room, wearing borrowed clothes, completely unaware that his entire identity is about to detonate. Mrs. Chen finds Theo in the hallway. His expression shifts the moment he sees her face. Office. Now, she says quietly. Theo closes the office door behind them. What's wrong? The birthmark on Boris's wrist. Mrs. Chen's voice is steady now, but her hands still tremble as she holds out the tablet. I know that birthmark. 20 years ago, I was working at a hospital in Maryland when a newborn Omega boy was kidnapped from the maternity ward. His name was Violet Morgan. He had that exact birthmark. Theo stares at the screen, at the side-by-side images that leave no room for doubt. You think Boris is? I don't think. I know. Mrs. Chen pulls up more photos, more articles, the missing person report that was filed for years before being moved to cold cases. That boy is Violet Morgan. Which means everything Boris believes about his identity, his family, his history, it's a lie. Theo sinks into his desk chair, running a hand through his hair. His parents aren't his parents. Or they are, but, Mrs. Chen shakes her head. This is going to destroy him. They sit in heavy silence. Through the office door, they can hear Boris moving around in the kitchen, probably looking for food. He sounds so young, so normal, so completely unprepared for what's coming. We have to tell him, Theo says finally. Carefully. Mrs. Chen's eyes are bright with unshed tears. That boy has already been stolen once. We need to be gentle. We need proof. And we need to find Leslie Morrison. I'll make some calls, Theo says, already reaching for his phone. Quietly. But Mrs. Chen, if this is real, if he really is that missing child, then we're about to give him back everything he lost. Mrs. Chen's voice breaks slightly. And take away everything he thought he had. Boris knows something is catastrophically wrong the moment Theo and Mrs. Chen sit him down at the dining table. They have that look, the careful, gentle expression people wear when they're about to detonate your entire world. Whatever it is, just tell me, Boris says, though his hands are already trembling. Is this about the fake engagement? Did your father find out? It's about your birthmark, Mrs. Chen says softly. Boris glances down at the crescent moon on his wrist, confused. What about it? Theo slides a tablet across the table. Just look. Please. The first image is a news article from 2005. The headline makes Boris's stomach drop. Newborn Omega stolen from Maryland hospital, mother pleads for baby's return. There's a photo of a young woman, an Omega, clearly, with devastated eyes and a hospital bracelet still on her wrist. She's holding a blanket, and beside her is a police photo of a tiny wrist with a crescent moon birthmark. Boris's crescent moon birthmark. No, he whispers. Keep reading, Mrs. Chen says gently. He scrolls. More articles. Baby Violet Morgan still missing after 6 months. Police investigation goes cold in Omega infant kidnapping. Mother refuses to give up hope. I know my baby is out there. Each article features that same woman, Leslie Morrison. In later photos, the grief has settled into something harder, more determined. There are images of candlelight vigils, missing person posters, a foundation she started for missing Omegas. The baby's name was Violet Morgan, Mrs. Chen says. He was 3 days old when someone dressed as a nurse took him from the maternity ward. I was working that shift. I held that baby. I saw that birthmark. Her voice cracks. Boris, I'm so sorry, but I think you're Violet Morgan. The room tilts. Boris grips the edge of the table, trying to breathe. No. My parents adopted me legally. They have papers, certificates. From where? Theo asks quietly. What agency? Boris opens his mouth. Closes it. He doesn't actually know. His parents always said it was a private adoption, that his birth mother was young and couldn't keep him, that everything was handled through a family lawyer who's now dead. He's never thought to question it. I need to call them, Boris says, standing abruptly. His chair scrapes against the floor. This is a mistake. It has to be. Boris, Theo starts. Give me your phone. Boris's voice is sharp, borderline desperate. Mine's still in my bag wherever we left it. Please. Theo hands over his phone without argument. Boris locks himself in the guest room. His hands shake so badly it takes 3 tries to dial his mom's number. Teresa Brooks, the woman who raised him, who taught him to read, who held him through every nightmare and celebrated every achievement. She answers on the second ring. Hello? Mom, it's me. I'm using a friend's phone. Boris forces his voice to stay steady. I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. A pause. Boris? Honey, what's wrong? You sound. Where did you adopt me from? The silence stretches too long. Mom, where did you get me? Boris, why are you asking this now? Teresa's voice has gone tight, defensive. You know we love you more than anything. I know about the birthmark. Boris's voice breaks. I know about Violet Morgan. I know about the kidnapping. He hears her gasp, then muffled sounds. She's calling for his dad. There's fumbling, and then Ted Brooks's voice comes on the line, deep and careful. Boris. Son. Let us explain. Did you buy me? Boris whispers. Did you pay someone to steal me from my mother? It wasn't like that. Ted's voice cracks. We couldn't have children. We tried for years, IVF, surrogates, everything. We were desperate. And then a lawyer your mother knew said he could help us, that he knew someone who could arrange a private adoption. How much? Boris demands. How much did you pay for me? Another terrible silence. $25,000, Teresa whispers in the background, and Boris hears her crying. The number lands like a physical blow. $25,000. The price of a used car. Less than 1 year of his tuition. That's what they paid for him. Did you know? Boris's voice is eerily calm now. Did you know it wasn't legal? We thought. The lawyer said the mother was young, that she couldn't keep you, that she signed papers. Ted stumbles over the words. We wanted to believe it was legitimate. Maybe we knew it was too easy, too fast, but we told ourselves. You told yourselves what you needed to hear so you could sleep at night. Boris's laugh is brittle, broken. While my real mother was searching for me. While she was filing missing person reports and doing interviews and never giving up hope. You knew, didn't you? Deep down, you knew something was wrong. Boris, please, Teresa is sobbing openly now. We love you. We raised you. We're your parents. You're kidnappers. The word tastes like acid. You bought a stolen baby and lied to him for 20 years. Son, Ted tries. Don't call me that. Boris hangs up. The phone slips from his numb fingers. He stands there, staring at nothing, his entire foundation crumbling beneath him. Everything he believed about himself, that he was chosen, that he was wanted enough that 2 beta parents went through extraordinary lengths to adopt an omega child, that he built himself from nothing through sheer determination, it's all a lie. He wasn't chosen. He was purchased. The sob that tears out of him is ugly, primal. Boris collapses onto the bed, and the floodgates open. 20 years of identity, of belonging, of knowing who he is and where he came from, gone. Shattered. Built on a foundation of theft and lies and his real mother's grief. He doesn't hear the door open. Doesn't register Theo's presence until the alpha is sitting beside him, not touching but close enough that his scent, that damned cedar and steel scent, wraps around Boris like a blanket. I've got you, Theo says quietly. I'm here. And for the first time in his life, Boris, who spent years proving he doesn't need anyone, who's built walls so high around his heart that no alpha has ever gotten close, doesn't push him away. He turns into Theo's chest and breaks apart completely. Theo's arms come around him, steady and warm and careful. Not constraining. Not possessive. Just there. Solid when everything else is falling apart. They bought me, Boris gasps between sobs. They bought me like I was merchandise. I know. Theo's hand moves in slow circles on his back. I know. I'm so sorry. Boris cries until he has nothing left, until his throat is raw and his eyes are swollen and his body is shaking with exhaustion. Through it all, Theo doesn't let go. And when Boris finally pulls back, embarrassed and devastated, Theo just hands him tissues and says, "Mrs. Chen is making tea. When you're ready, we'll figure out what comes next. Together." Together. The word shouldn't matter. This is fake, temporary, a business arrangement. But right now, with his world in ruins, it's the only thing keeping Boris from flying apart completely. Boris gives up on sleep at 2:47 a.m. He's been lying in the guest room's impossibly comfortable bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, his mind a hurricane of questions that have no good answers. Who is he? Boris Morgan or Violet Morgan? Do the Brooks family deserve forgiveness for loving him, even though they stole him? Does his real mother, Leslie Morrison, even want to know him after 20 years, or has she moved on, built a new life without the ghost of a stolen baby haunting her? And underneath it all, the question that terrifies him most, if everything he believed about himself was a lie, what's left? He slips out onto the penthouse balcony, bare feet on cold stone, wearing the borrowed t-shirt and joggers that smell faintly of expensive detergent and Theo's lingering scent. Atlanta sprawls below him, the city lights blurred by the remnants of rain clouds. The air is heavy with humidity and the distant smell of wet asphalt. Boris wraps his arms around himself and tries to breathe through the panic clawing at his chest. Couldn't sleep either? Boris doesn't jump, he'd scented Theo approaching, that cedar and steel presence impossible to miss. The alpha emerges onto the balcony carrying 2 mugs of tea and a thick blanket draped over one arm. "It's 3 in the morning, Boris says instead of answering. "Don't you have billionaire things to do? Companies to run, mergers to finalize? Nothing more important than this." Theo hands him a mug, chamomile, from the smell, and drapes the blanket around Boris's shoulders without asking permission. The weight is grounding. "I've been where you are. Different details, same feeling." Boris takes a sip of tea to avoid responding. It's perfect, not too hot, lightly sweetened, exactly what he needs even though he never said so. Theo leans against the balcony railing beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touch but maintaining that respectful distance he's been careful about since the car. "My father built Kim Tech Industries from nothing," Theo says quietly, staring out at the skyline. That's the official story. Self-made man, immigrant success, the Korean-American dream. But Boris prompts when Theo goes silent. "But the foundation is rotten." Theo's jaw tightens. Illegal labor practices in the early years. Bribery to secure contracts. Stolen patents. He stepped on anyone who got in his way, destroyed smaller companies, paid off inspectors who found safety violations. He takes a breath. People died in one of our factories in 2019 because he cut costs on ventilation systems. 6 workers. The lawsuits were settled quietly, buried under NDAs. Boris turns to look at him. Theo's profile is sharp against the city lights, beautiful and exhausted and carrying weight that Boris recognizes intimately. "Why do you stay?" Boris asks. "Because someone has to fix it." Theo finally meets his eyes. "I've spent 5 years cleaning up his mess, implementing ethical practices, compensating victims through anonymous channels so he can't stop me. But he sees it as weakness. To him, ethics are just obstacles between him and more power. So we're both," Boris's voice cracks. "We're both raised by people who loved us but built that love on crimes." "Yes." Theo's admission is raw, honest. "The Brooks family loved you. I don't doubt that. My father loves me in his own twisted way. But love built on rotten foundations doesn't make the foundation less rotten. It just makes it harder to tear down." They stand in silence, the weight of shared understanding settling between them like a third presence. Mrs. Chen is already looking for Leslie Morrison, Theo says eventually. We'll find her. And when we do, I'll make sure you have every resource you need, lawyers, therapists, security if the press gets involved. Whatever you need to navigate this. Why? Boris turns to face him fully. Why do you care? I'm just some Omega you sent Mark to get out of an arranged marriage. This isn't your problem. Maybe I'm tired of people treating Omegas like problems to be solved instead of people deserving respect and agency. Theo's voice drops lower, more intimate. Maybe I see someone who's been fighting alone for too long, and I want to help. Or maybe, he stops himself. Maybe what? Theo's eyes drop to Boris's mouth, then away. Maybe you're not just some Omega to me anymore. The air between them feels charged, heavy with things unsaid. Boris's heat is definitely closer now, he can feel it simmering under his skin, the way Theo's scent makes his body respond with want and need and something terrifyingly close to trust. I don't know how to do this, Boris whispers. Let someone in. Accept help. He gestures helplessly. Vulnerable. I know. Theo shifts slightly closer. But you don't have to figure it out alone. Boris's walls are crumbling, eroded by exhaustion and trauma, and this alpha who somehow sees him, really sees him, without trying to diminish or control or fix him. The scent mark on my wrist, Boris says, his voice barely audible. That was surface level. Temporary. If we're going to sell this engagement to your father, to the media when my story breaks, it needs to be deeper. Theo goes very still. Boris. I'm asking you to scent me properly. Boris meets his eyes, steady despite the fear coursing through him. Not as a claim of ownership. But as a choice. My choice. Are you sure? Theo's voice is rough with restraint. Once I do that, my scent will be in your skin for weeks. Everyone will know you're protected, Boris finishes. Everyone will know I'm protected. That matters, especially with everything that's coming. Theo searches his face for a long moment, then nods slowly. Tell me if you want me to stop. At any point. Boris nods, his heart hammering. Theo moves closer, eliminating the careful distances maintained. His hand comes up to cup Boris's jaw, thumb brushing his cheekbone. The touch is gentle, reverent, and Boris's breath catches. Tilt your head, Theo murmurs. Boris does, exposing his throat, the most vulnerable gesture an Omega can make toward an alpha. His pulse jumps visibly under his skin. Theo leans in, and his nose traces the line of Boris's neck, learning his scent, rain and something sweet like honey, stress pheromones mixing with the first hints of approaching heat. Then his scent glands brush against Boris's throat, deliberate and slow, and Boris's knees go weak. The sensation is overwhelming, every nerve ending lighting up, his body recognizing this as right in a way nothing has ever felt right before. Theo's scent surrounds him, sinking into his skin, claiming him in a way that feels like safety instead of ownership. Theo pulls back slightly, his breathing unsteady. Okay? Yeah, Boris breathes. More than okay. Theo scents his other side, his wrists, the sensitive spot behind his ear. Each touch is careful, controlled, building an intimacy that has nothing to do with sex and everything to do with trust. When Theo finally steps back, Boris sways slightly. His wrapped in alpha scent, marked thoroughly enough that any Omega or Alpha within 20 feet will know his spoken for. Thank you, Theo says quietly. For trusting me. Boris touches his throat where Theo's scent glands brushed his skin. Thank you for asking. They stand together on the balcony until dawn breaks over Atlanta, two people with broken foundations learning to build something new on honest ground. Mrs. Chen takes one look at Boris and Theo at breakfast, both exhausted, both running on fumes and trauma, and makes an executive decision. You need real food, she announces. Not tea and toast. Real food. 20 minutes later, the penthouse smells like home. Not Theo's sterile, expensive home, but Boris's home, the Georgia he grew up in, the Sunday dinners at the Brooks house, the comfort food that sustained him through every crisis before this one. Mrs. Chen has ordered from Busy Bee Cafe, mac and cheese that's more cheese than pasta, fried chicken with a crust that shatters perfectly, collard greens swimming in pot liquor, cornbread that's somehow both crispy and tender. She spreads it all out on the living room floor, on actual china plates, because even comfort food gets the luxury treatment here, and gestures for them to sit. No table, she says firmly. Tables are for business. This is family food. You eat it like family. Boris sinks down onto the plush rug, cross-legged, and the smell alone makes his eyes sting. He hasn't had busy bees since his last birthday, when Teresa drove into Atlanta to pick up his favorite order. Teresa. Who bought him. Who loved him. Who's both of those things at once. Tell me about Georgia, Mrs. Chen says gently, passing him the mac and cheese. The parts you want to remember. So Boris does. He talks about growing up in a small town outside Savannah, about summer humidity so thick you could swim through it, about fishing in the creek with Ted even though neither of them ever caught anything worth keeping. He talks about Teresa teaching him to make biscuits, about church potlucks and 4th of July fireworks, about the way the whole town showed up when he presented as Omega at 15, some supportive, some predatory, but the Brooks family standing between him and anyone who looked at him wrong. They loved me, Boris says, his voice breaking. That part wasn't a lie. They really did love me. Love doesn't erase harm, Mrs. Chen says quietly. But harm doesn't erase love either. Both things can be true. Theo, who's been eating silently, reaches over and squeezes Boris's shoulder. The touch is brief but grounding. They finish the meal in comfortable quiet, and Boris realizes this is the first time he's felt anything close to peace since entering that car yesterday. Has it really only been a day? It feels like his entire life has been dismantled and reconstructed in the span of 24 hours. I found her, Mrs. Chen says as she's clearing plates. Leslie Morrison. She's living in Baltimore now. Remarried to an alpha named David Chen. No relation to me, different spelling. They have a son together, age 4. Boris's heart stutters. He has a brother. A half-brother who isn't stolen, who grew up knowing his mother's love from the beginning. I need to call her, Boris whispers. Before I lose my nerve. Mrs. Chen nods and hands him her phone. I already spoke to her briefly. She's waiting. Boris takes the phone to the balcony, the same spot where Theo scented him at dawn. His hands shake as he dials the number Mrs. Chen provided. It rings twice. Then, hello? The voice is soft, feminine, shaking with barely contained hope. Boris's throat closes. Leslie Morrison, he manages. Yes. And you're, a sharp inhale. You're my Violet. Boris breaks at the sound of that name, his first name, the one he never knew, the one that was stolen along with everything else. I think so. I have the birthmark. The crescent moon. The sob that comes through the phone is raw, 20 years of grief and hope colliding. Oh my God. Oh my God, baby, I never stopped looking. I never stopped. I know. Boris is crying too, silently, tears streaming down his face. I saw the articles. The foundation. Everything you did. Tell me about you, Leslie says through her tears. Tell me everything. What do you like? What are you studying? Are you okay? Have you been safe? And Boris talks. For 2 hours, he tells her about college, about his love of languages, about the small victories and large struggles of being an Omega in a world that still sees them as lesser. Leslie listens like every word is precious, asking questions, laughing at his stories, crying at the hard parts. She tells him about his father, an alpha named Marcus who died in a car accident before Boris was born. He would have loved you so much, Leslie whispers. Would picked out your name together. Violet, after his grandmother. She tells him about his little brother, Eli, who's obsessed with dinosaurs and starting pre-K in the fall. He's going to be so excited to have a big brother. I want to meet you, Boris says finally. If you want to meet me. I'm booking a flight right now, Leslie says immediately. I can be in Atlanta tomorrow morning. Is that too soon? I don't want to overwhelm you, but Tomorrow is perfect, Boris says. Please come. When he finally hangs up, he feels hollowed out and full at the same time. Theo is waiting just inside the balcony door, giving him space but staying close enough to catch him if he falls. She's coming tomorrow, Boris says. Good, Theo replies simply. The heat hits at 11 p.m. Boris wakes up sweating, his body temperature spiking, need coiling low in his belly like a living thing. He recognizes the signs immediately: stress-induced preheat, early and intense. He has maybe 6 hours before he's fully under. He staggers to the bathroom, splashes cold water on his face, and realizes with growing panic that he's saturated in Theo's scent from the marking. His body is interpreting it as an invitation, as safety, as alpha. There's a soft knock on the bedroom door. Boris. Theo's voice is carefully controlled. I can scent you from the hallway. You're going into heat. Boris opens the door. Theo's pupils are blown wide, his jaw tight with restraint, but his posture is non-threatening, hands visible, standing back, giving Boris the power in this moment. I can leave, Theo says immediately. I can call a professional heat service. They can be here in 30 minutes. Or I can go to a hotel and Mrs. Chen can stay. The word comes out before Boris can second guess it. Please. I don't want strangers. And I don't want to be alone. Boris, you need to understand what you're asking. I'm asking for comfort. Not sex. Boris meets his eyes. Can you do that? Can you help me through this without? Yes. Theo's answer is immediate and firm. Of course I can. Whatever you need. Theo transforms the guest room into a nest. He brings every blanket and pillow from the linen closet, arranges them according to Boris's mumbled preferences, adjusts the temperature until it's perfect. He brings water bottles, electrolyte drinks, protein bars for when Boris can eat. And then he sits on the edge of the nest, close enough to touch but not touching, and lets Boris arrange him like another pillow. Boris, fever-hot and trembling, curls against Theo's chest. The alpha's scent wraps around him like armor, and the heat, usually terrifying and isolating, feels manageable. Cool cloth, Boris mumbles, and Theo has one ready, pressing it to his forehead. Drink, Theo says hours later, holding a water bottle to Boris's lips. Through it all, Theo's hands stay respectful, on Boris's back, in his hair, holding him steady when the waves of heat make him shake. Never straying, never pushing, just there. You're safe, Theo murmurs when Boris whimpers. I've got you. You're safe. And for the first time in his life, burning through a heat in an alpha's arms, Boris believes it. Boris stands in the lobby of a boutique hotel in Midtown, still shaky from the heat that finally broke at dawn. Theo is beside him, close enough to provide silent support, far enough to give Boris space to do this on his own terms. Mrs. Chen waits near the entrance, tissues ready, a lifetime of maternal instinct prepared for whatever comes next. The elevator dings. Boris's heart stops. The woman who steps out is petite, barely 5'3", with dark curly hair streaked with premature silver and eyes the exact same shade of amber brown as Boris's own. She's wearing a simple blue dress and gripping her purse like a lifeline, and the moment she sees Boris, her entire face crumples. Violet, she breathes. Boris can't move. Can't speak. Can only stare at this stranger who is somehow intimately familiar, whose features he sees every time he looks in a mirror, whose grief is carried unknowingly for 20 years. Leslie Morrison crosses the lobby in 6 quick steps and pulls Boris into her arms. She's so small. Boris towers over her, has to bend down to bury his face in her shoulder, but her grip is fierce and desperate and unbreakable. She smells like lavender and vanilla and home, not the home he knew, but the home his biology remembers, imprinted in those first 3 days before everything was stolen. My baby, Leslie sobs. My baby, you're here, you're real, you're. Boris breaks. Again. He's cried more in the past 48 hours than in his entire adult life, but this is different. This is grief and relief and recognition all tangled together, mourning the 20 years they lost while celebrating that they're here now. They sink onto a lobby couch, still holding each other, and Theo quietly redirects hotel staff who try to intervene. Mrs. Chen brings water. The world narrows to just this, a mother and son who should never have been separated, finally together. Let me look at you, Leslie says eventually, pulling back with trembling hands to cup Boris's face. Her thumbs brush away his tears. You're so handsome. So grown. I missed everything. I'm sorry, Boris chokes out. No. Leslie's voice turns fierce. Don't you dare apologize. None of this was your fault. Not 1 second of it. She takes his hand, examines the crescent moon birthmark like it's the most precious thing she's ever seen. Then Boris notices the scar across her palm, thick, raised, old. The kidnapper? He asks quietly. Leslie nods. I fought. I tried to stop her. But she had a weapon, and I'd just given birth, and, her voice cracks. I wasn't strong enough. You started a foundation, Boris says. You never stopped looking. That's the strongest thing I've ever heard. They talk for an hour. Leslie tells him about Marcus, his father, a gentle alpha who worked construction and played guitar and died 3 months before Boris was born when a drunk driver ran a red light. He knew you were a boy, Leslie whispers. The ultrasound tech told us. He was so excited. He'd already started building a crib. She tells him about the foundation that's helped find 12 missing Omegas over the years. About her husband David, who knows about Violet, who supported her search every step of the way. About Eli, who saw Boris's photo last night and declared, "My brother is big." I want to meet them, Boris says. Your family. Our family. They can't wait to meet you. Leslie's smile is radiant through her tears. Then her expression hardens. But first, I need to meet the people who took you. Ted and Teresa Brooks arrive 20 minutes later. They look smaller than Boris remembers, diminished by guilt and shame. Teresa's eyes are red and swollen. Ted's shoulders are hunched like he's bracing for a blow. The moment Leslie sees them, she stands. Her omega scent shifts to something sharp and dangerous. You, she hisses. Mrs. Morrison, Ted starts. We want to. You stole my baby. Leslie's voice is low, shaking with rage. I was 23 years old, alone, grieving, and I had 3 days with my son before you paid someone to rip him out of my arms. Do you have any idea what you did to me? Teresa is crying silently. We didn't know. You knew. Leslie moves closer, and Boris sees where he got his spine from. Maybe you didn't know the details, but you knew something was wrong. Legal adoptions don't cost $25,000 in cash. They don't happen in parking lots. You knew, and you did it anyway because you wanted a baby more than you cared about whose life you destroyed. You're right, Ted says, his voice breaking. He doesn't make excuses, doesn't try to defend himself. You're absolutely right. We knew it was wrong. We told ourselves lies to make it okay, but we knew. And God, I'm so sorry. There's no apology big enough for what we did. Teresa reaches for Boris. Honey, please. Don't touch him. Theo's voice cuts through, quiet but absolute. His move to stand beside Boris, alpha presents a clear warning. Leslie looks at Theo for the first time, and something passes between them, one parent to another, assessing, understanding. Who are you? Leslie asks. Theo Kim. I've been helping Boris through this. Helping or taking advantage? Leslie's eyes narrow. Because my son is marked with alpha scent, and he's vulnerable right now. Mom, Boris starts, then stops. The word just slipped out. Leslie's expression softens instantly. He's been good, Boris says. Really good. Respectful. I asked for the scent marking. I needed protection with everything about to go public. Leslie studies Theo for a long moment, then nods slowly. Okay. But if that changes. You'll destroy me, Theo finishes. I know. Mrs. Chen gave me the same speech. Despite everything, Leslie almost smiles. She turns back to the Brooks family. I should press charges. You deserve prison. We do, Ted agrees. But that would put Boris through a trial, through media scrutiny, through having to testify against the only parents he's known for 20 years. Leslie's hands are clenched into fists. So here's what's going to happen. You stay away from Boris for 1 year. No calls, no texts, no visits. He needs space to heal and build a relationship with me without you interfering. Leslie, Teresa starts. 1 year, Leslie repeats. And after that, if Boris wants to see you, that's his choice. But you don't get to pressure him. You don't get to play the victim. And if I find out you've violated this boundary, I will press charges and I will make sure everyone knows what you did. Understood. Ted and Teresa nod, broken. Boris, caught between the woman who gave him life and the people who raised him, feels like he's being torn in half. But he's too exhausted to fight. 1 year, he agrees quietly. I need time. Teresa sobs harder, but Ted takes her hand and leads her toward the exit. At the door, he looks back. For what it's worth, Ted says, we really did love you. I know, Boris whispers. That's what makes this so hard. Leslie stays in Atlanta for 5 days, and Boris spends every possible moment with her. They meet for breakfast at small cafes, walk through Piedmont Park, sit in Theo's penthouse living room with photo albums spread across the coffee table like archaeological evidence of a life Boris should have lived. This was Marcus, Leslie says softly, pointing to a photo of a young alpha with kind eyes and a guitar slung over his shoulder. He was 25 when this was taken. A month before he died. Boris stares at his father's face, his eyes, his jawline, features he's seen in the mirror his whole life without understanding where they came from. He looks happy. He was. We both were. Leslie traces the photo with one finger. He worked construction during the day and played at open mic nights on weekends. Terrible singer, beautiful guitar player. When I told him I was pregnant, he cried and then wrote you a song. A song? Leslie pulls up her phone, scrolling through files until she finds an old audio recording, grainy, recorded on equipment from 2 decades ago. She presses play. A guitar melody fills the room, gentle and hopeful, and then Marcus's voice, little moon, little light, waiting for you to arrive. Little moon, burning bright, you're already loved, you're already mine. Boris's throat closes. Theo, who's been working quietly on his laptop across the room, looks up with an expression of such tenderness that Boris has to look away. He called you his little moon because of the birthmark, Leslie explains. Said it was a sign you were meant for special things. Boris touches the crescent moon on his wrist, and for the first time, it feels like a blessing instead of evidence of a crime. Leslie shows him more photos, her pregnant belly, the nursery Marcus had started building, a tiny blue blanket embroidered with moons. This was going to be your coming home blanket, she says. The police kept it as evidence for years. I only got it back 5 years ago. Do you still have it? Boris asks. It's at home in Baltimore. I'll bring it next time. Leslie squeezes his hand. There will be a next time, right? You'll visit? You'll let me be part of your life. Of course. Boris's voice is fierce. You're my mother. My birth mother. I want to know you. I want to know Eli. He struggles for words. I want to build what we should have had. Leslie pulls him into another embrace, and Boris is learning that she's a hugger, tactile and warm in a way that feels foreign and right at the same time. That evening, she asks to speak with Theo privately. Boris watches from the balcony as Leslie and Theo sit in the living room, voices low but body language intense. He can't hear the words, but he sees Leslie's pointed finger, sees Theo's careful posture, sees the moment when Leslie's expression shifts from protective fury to tentative acceptance. When they finish, Theo joins Boris outside. She threatened to castrate me if I ever treat you as property, Theo says mildly. What did you say? That she'd have to get in line behind Mrs. Chen. Theo's mouth quirks into an almost smile. Your birth mother is formidable. I like her. She likes you too. I think. Boris leans against the railing. She wouldn't have bothered threatening you if she didn't think you were worth the warning. Omega parent logic. Parent logic, period. They stand in comfortable silence until Leslie calls Boris back inside to video chat with Eli, a bouncing 4-year-old who talks a mile a minute about dinosaurs and declares that Boris is the biggest brother ever, with such enthusiasm that Boris laughs for the first time in days. The next afternoon, Boris meets Teresa Brooks at a quiet restaurant in Virginia Highland. She looks fragile, aged a decade in less than a week, and she's carrying a canvas bag that she clutches like a lifeline. Thank you for seeing me, Teresa says as they sit down. I know I don't deserve. Please don't. Boris holds up a hand. Can we not do the apologies again? I just want to talk. Like we used to. Teresa nods, tears already gathering in her eyes. She reaches into the bag and pulls out a pale yellow blanket, worn soft with age and washing. This was yours. Is yours. I bought it the day we brought you home. You slept with it until you were 7. Boris takes it, and the smell hits him, faded lavender detergent, the ghost of his childhood. His chest aches. And these? Teresa spreads photos across the table. Boris at 1 year old, covered in birthday cake. Boris at 5, missing his front teeth. Boris at his 8th grade graduation, awkward and gangly. Boris at 15, newly presented as Omega, looking scared and defiant. I was there for all of this, Teresa whispers. I held you through nightmares and fevers and heartbreaks. I taught you to read and made your favorite meals and fought anyone who tried to hurt you. That was real, Boris. Whatever else was a lie, that was real. I know, Boris says, and they're both crying now. That's what makes this so hard. If you'd been terrible parents, this would be easier. But you weren't. You loved me. And I, his voice breaks. I still love you. I hate what you did, but I still love you. Teresa reaches across the table and takes his hand. We don't deserve that. Probably not. Boris squeezes her fingers. But I need space. Real space. The year that Leslie asked for, I need that. To figure out who I am without you, to build something with her, to just breathe. Okay. Teresa nods, even as her face crumples. Okay. But after that year, if you want. Maybe. Boris is honest. I don't know what I'll want in a year. But I don't want to lose you completely. You're still my mom. You're not my only mom anymore. They cry together until their food arrives cold and untouched. The media storm hits that night. Kidnapped Omega found after 20 years reads the CNN headline. Baby Violet Morgan reunited with birth mother proclaims the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Within hours, Boris's face is everywhere. Photos from Leslie's foundation website, speculation about the mysterious alpha he's been spotted with, think pieces about Omega trafficking and adoption fraud. Boris's phone, recovered from Theo's car, won't stop buzzing with messages from classmates, reporters, distant relatives he hasn't spoken to in years. We need to get ahead of this, Theo says, scrolling through his own phone. Control the narrative before it controls us. Leslie, still in Atlanta for one more day, nods grimly. I have a press conference scheduled for tomorrow morning. Boris, you don't have to be there if you're not ready. I'll be there, Boris says. He's exhausted, emotionally wrung out, carrying 2 baby blankets and a childhood's worth of photos. But he's done hiding. Let's tell the truth. All of it. Theo's hand finds his, solid and steady. Together. Boris squeezes back. Together. The press conference goes viral. Boris stands beside Leslie, Theo a steady presence just off camera, and tells the world his story. Leslie announces a $50,000 reward for information leading to arrests in the trafficking ring. The footage plays on every major network, a young Omega with his birth mother, reclaiming a stolen life, refusing to be a victim. By evening, Boris has received 3 death threats and 4 to 7 interview requests. And 1 phone call from Chairman Kim. He wants to meet you, Theo says, his expression grim. Tomorrow night. Formal dinner at his estate. Let me guess, he wants to assess whether I am worthy of his precious heir. Boris's laugh is bitter. He wants to buy you off or intimidate you into leaving. Theo's jaw tightens. You don't have to go. I can handle my father. No. Boris straightens his spine. I'm done being pushed around. I'm done letting powerful people decide my worth. Let him try. The Kim estate in Buckhead is obscene. All stone facades and manicured gardens, old money trying to look older. Boris arrives with Theo in a town car, wearing a custom navy suit that Theo's tailor delivered that afternoon. He'll expect you to wear traditional Omega formal wear, Theo had warned. A hanbok, probably soft colors, something that signals deference. Then he'll be disappointed, Boris replied. The suit is sharp, masculine, perfectly tailored to Boris's frame. Navy wool with subtle pinstripes, crisp white shirt, silver cufflinks engraved with a crescent moon, a gift from Leslie before she flew back to Baltimore. Boris looks powerful, professional, completely uninterested in performing the delicate Omega role Chairman Kim expects. Theo's eyes had darkened when he saw Boris in it. You look like I'm about to walk into battle? Like you've already won. Now, standing in the marble foyer of the Kim estate, Boris channels every ounce of defiance he possesses. A butler escorts them to a private dining room where Chairman Kim waits. The man is exactly what Boris expected. Late 50s, impeccably dressed, radiating the kind of cold authority that comes from decades of treating people as chess pieces. His alpha scent is overwhelming, deliberate, designed to cow any Omega in his presence into submission. Boris's hindbrain screams at him to lower his eyes, tilt his head, show his throat. He does none of those things. Chairman Kim, Boris says evenly. Thank you for the invitation. The chairman's eyes sweep over Boris, the suit, the confident posture, the lack of traditional Omega deference, and his expression hardens. Sit. It's not a request. It's a command, led with alpha compulsion that would make most Omegas comply automatically. Boris pulls out his own chair and sits at his leisure. Lovely home. Theo sits beside him, and Boris catches the ghost of a smile on his face. Dinner is served by silent staff, course after course of expensive food that tastes like ash in Boris's mouth. The chairman doesn't make small talk. He watches Boris like a predator studying prey, waiting for weakness. Finally, as dessert is cleared, Chairman Kim speaks. Let's dispense with pleasantries. He slides an envelope across the table. $2 million. Cashier's check. You take it, you disappear from my son's life, and you sign an NDA that ensures you never speak about this arrangement or the Kim family again. Boris doesn't touch the envelope. No. You haven't even looked at the amount. I don't need to. I'm not for sale. Boris meets the chairman's eyes. I know that's a difficult concept for you to grasp, since you've apparently spent your entire life treating people as commodities, but I'm not interested. The temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. You're an Omega student drowning in debt, Chairman Kim says, his voice like ice. You were kidnapped as an infant and raised by criminals. You have no family connections, no resources, no power. Do you really think you can stand against me? I think I already am. Boris leans forward. See, here's what you don't understand about Omegas like me, Chairman Kim. We've spent our entire lives being underestimated, dismissed, told we're weak and need alpha protection. So we learn to be stronger than anyone expects. We learn to survive in a world designed to diminish us. Pretty speech. It doesn't change reality. The reality is that I'm working with federal investigators to dismantle the trafficking ring that stole me, Boris continues, his voice sharp. The reality is that I have a platform now, a story that people care about, and I'm not afraid to use it. The reality is that your son deserves better than a father who views love as a business transaction and people as assets to be acquired or discarded. Chairman Kim's alpha scent spikes, fury and dominance rolling off him in waves meant to force Boris into submission. You dare. I dare. Boris doesn't flinch. Because unlike you, I understand that real power doesn't come from money or threats or crushing people under your heel. It comes from standing up for what's right, even when it's terrifying. Theo has been trying to fix your company, to undo the damage you've caused, to build something ethical and sustainable. And instead of supporting him, you're trying to force him into a loveless marriage for a business merger. That marriage would secure our position. Your position. Boris cuts him off. Not his. You want security? Build a company that doesn't rely on exploitation and corruption. You want legacy? Try actually caring about your son as a person instead of as an extension of your empire. The chairman stands abruptly, his chair scraping against marble. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're a child playing at politics. I'm an Omega who's been through hell and survived it, Boris says, standing to face him. I'm the son of a mother who never gave up searching for me and another mother who loved me despite her crimes. I'm someone who understands that family is about showing up, about fighting for each other, about being honest even when it's painful. And I'm telling you that Theo deserves that. He deserves a father who sees him, really sees him, instead of just seeing what he can extract from him. Get out. Chairman Kim's voice is deadly quiet. Get out of my house. Gladly. Boris turns to leave. And you? The chairman turns on Theo, who's been sitting in controlled silence throughout the exchange. If you walk out that door with him, you're cut off. No company position, no inheritance, no family. I will erase you from everything I've built. Theo stands slowly. His expression is calm, but Boris can see the storm beneath, years of trying to win his father's approval, trying to reform an empire built on blood, finally reaching his breaking point. I've spent 5 years trying to legitimize a business you built on exploitation, Theo says quietly. I've cleaned up your messes, compensated your victims, implemented ethics policies you fought me on every step. And you know what I've learned? That I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your money or your name or your company. What I need is to be someone Boris can be proud of. Someone who stands up for what's right, not what's profitable. He walks around the table and takes Boris's hand, a deliberate, public claim in front of his father. Let's go, Theo says. They walk out together, leaving Chairman Kim standing alone in his marble dining room, surrounded by wealth that suddenly looks very empty. In the car, Boris is shaking, adrenaline and fear and exhilaration crashing through him. Theo, your inheritance, your company. Doesn't matter. Theo's voice is rough. None of it matters if I have to compromise who I am to keep it. But. Theo pulls the car over on a quiet street, throws it into park, and turns to Boris. His eyes are blazing, his alpha scent wild with emotion, desire and pride in something deeper that Boris is afraid to name. You stood up to him, Theo says. You stood up to one of the most powerful alphas in Atlanta and didn't back down. Do you have any idea how incredible that was? I was terrified, Boris admits. You were magnificent. Theo's hand comes up to cup Boris's jaw. And I, God, Boris, I. The kiss happens before either of them can think better of it. It's desperate, claiming, real in a way the fake engagement never was. Theo's mouth is hot against Boris's, his alpha scent wrapping around them both like a physical thing. Boris gasps, and Theo deepens the kiss, one hand tangling in Boris's hair while the other spans his waist. It's nothing like the careful, respectful scenting. This is raw need, weeks of tension breaking like a dam, both of them pouring everything they can't say into the contact. When they finally break apart, both breathing hard, Theo rests his forehead against Boris's. This isn't fake anymore, Theo whispers. It hasn't been for a while. No, Boris agrees, his voice shaking. It hasn't. I want to court you. Properly. No contracts, no money, no pretending. Just, us. If you'll have me. Boris thinks about everything he's learned in the past week, that love can coexist with betrayal, that family is complicated, that he's stronger than he ever imagined, that this alpha sees him, really sees him, and still chooses to stand beside him instead of trying to control him. Yes, Boris says. God, yes. They kiss again, softer this time, a promise instead of desperation. And somewhere in the distance, Boris's phone buzzes with a news alert. Chairman Kim's son walks out of family dinner with viral Omega activist. The world is watching. But right now, in this car, with Theo's arms around him, Boris doesn't care. The attack comes 3 days after the dinner with Chairman Kim. Boris is leaving the Georgia State Library at dusk, backpack heavy with textbooks, mind on the essay due Monday. He's been trying to return to normal, classes, studying, pretending his face isn't plastered across every news outlet in the country. He doesn't notice the van until it's too late. 2 men in dark clothes grab him from behind, one clamping a hand over his mouth before he can scream. Boris's training kicks in, the self-defense classes every Omega takes after presenting, and he drives his elbow back hard into ribs, stomps on an instep, twists away from grasping hands. Get him in the van, one hisses. Boris recognizes the desperation in their movements, the sloppy panic of criminals who know their operation is crumbling. The trafficking ring. They've come to silence him before he can testify. He manages to hit his phone's emergency button, the one Theo installed that alerts both 911 and Theo's security team, before a fist connects with his jaw and the world tilts. Then Theo's security team arrives like avenging angels. Marcus and Jin, 2 ex-military alphas who've been shadowing Boris for days, descend on the attackers with brutal efficiency. One enforcer goes down with a broken arm. The other tries to run and gets tackled into the pavement. Police sirens wail in the distance. Theo's car screeches to a halt, and the Alpha is out before it's fully stopped, his scent wild with protective fury. He goes straight for Boris, hands gentle despite the violence still crackling in his eyes. Are you hurt? Theo's checking him over, fingers carefully probing the bruise blooming on Boris's jaw. Did they? I'm okay. Boris's voice shakes, but he's standing. I fought back. I wasn't going to let them. I know. Theo pulls him close, and Boris feels the tremor in the Alpha's frame, rage and fear barely contained. God, Boris, if they'd gotten you in that van. They didn't. Boris grips Theo's shirt. We stopped them. The police arrive. Statements are taken. The attackers are arrested, and under questioning, they give up names, contacts in the trafficking ring, locations of safe houses, evidence that will bring down the entire operation. By morning, Boris's attempted kidnapping is national news. The backlash against Chairman Kim is swift and brutal. Kim Tech Air's Omega partner attacked. Where was family support? Screams the headlines. Billionaire dismisses Omega trafficking while victim boyfriend fights for life. Social media explodes with outrage, calling for boycotts of Kim Tech products, demanding accountability. The chairman's PR team goes into damage control mode. 3 days later, Chairman Kim appears at a press conference, his expression carved from ice but his words carefully scripted. He announces a $5 million donation to Leslie Morrison's Foundation for Missing Omegas. He pledges Kim Tech resources to help law enforcement combat trafficking rings. He stands beside Theo and Boris, stiff, awkward, clearly hating every second, and says the words his lawyers wrote, "No one deserves what Boris Morgan endured. I was wrong to dismiss the severity of Omega trafficking, and I commit to being part of the solution." It's not an apology. It's not redemption. But it's a start. Afterward, in a rare moment of privacy, Chairman Kim looks at Theo. You could have destroyed me. The media would have eaten up a story about my rejection of you. I don't want to destroy you, Theo says quietly. I want you to be better. For yourself, not just for optics. Something flickers in the chairman's eyes, regret, maybe, or the first crack in decades of armor. He nods once and leaves. Think he'll change? Boris asks. I don't know. Theo takes Boris's hand. But I'm done waiting for him to. I'm building my own path now. That night, back at the penthouse, Theo asks Boris to sit with him on the balcony, their place, where so many turning points have happened. I need to ask you something, Theo says. And I need you to answer honestly, not because of gratitude or trauma bonding or any of the complicated things that have happened between us. Boris's heart kicks up. Okay. This started as a lie, Theo begins. A fake engagement to solve my problems. But somewhere along the way, probably the moment you stood in my father's dining room and refused to back down, it became real for me. You became real for me. He pulls out a small box, and Boris's breath catches. This isn't a bonding proposal, Theo says quickly. I'm not asking you to bond with me or move to Seoul or give up anything you've built here. I'm asking if you'll let me court you. Properly. The way you deserve, with time and patience and no pressure. Just a genuine chance to build something together. He opens the box. Inside are 2 silver rings, simple, elegant, engraved on the inside with a crescent moon. Courtship rings, Theo explains. Not bonds. Not claims. Just a promise that we're choosing each other, every day, for as long as it works for both of us. Boris's eyes burn with tears that have nothing to do with sadness. You really see me, don't you? Not as an Omega you need to protect or a problem you need to solve. Just me. Just you, Theo confirms. In all your stubborn, brilliant, fierce glory. Boris laughs, the sound watery but genuine. Yes. God, yes. I want to see where this goes. Where we go. Theo slides the ring onto Boris's finger, his right hand, not his left. Courtship, not marriage. Promise, not prison. Boris does the same for Theo, and they sit together as the city lights flicker below them, 2 people who found each other in chaos and chose to stay. 6 months later. Boris testifies at the trafficking ring trial. His testimony is devastating, detailed, unshakable. The ringleader gets 40 years. The broker who sold him to the Brooks family gets 25. 12 other members of the operation are convicted, and Leslie's foundation receives a flood of donations that will fund operations for a decade. Boris splits his time now, Atlanta for classes and his work with the foundation, Seoul for extended visits where Theo is building something new, an ethical tech startup focused on Omega rights advocacy and family reunification resources. Mrs. Chen has become surrogate grandmother to both Boris and Eli, who video chats his big brother Boris 3 times a week to share dinosaur facts. Leslie and Boris have dinner every Sunday when he's in Baltimore. The Brooks family remains at a distance, emails occasionally, photos of Boris's achievements that Teresa keeps in an album, the slow, painful work of rebuilding something that can never be what it was but might become something honest. Tonight, Boris and Theo stand in a hotel ballroom in Atlanta, hosting the annual fundraiser for Leslie's foundation. Boris wears a tailored suit, charcoal this time, with a silver tie that matches the courtship ring on his finger. Theo is beside him in a midnight blue suit, and they are both wearing cufflinks engraved with crescent moons. You ready? Theo asks as the event coordinator signals them to the stage. Always, Boris says. They walk out together to applause, and Boris looks at the crowd, Leslie in the front row with David and Eli, Mrs. Chen dabbing her eyes with a tissue, Chairman Kim in the back looking uncomfortable but present, dozens of Omegas and their families who've been helped by the foundation. Boris thinks about the terrified student who climbed into the wrong car 6 months ago. That person was so afraid of being weak, of needing anyone, of admitting that he couldn't do everything alone. He looks at Theo, this alpha who could have claimed him, controlled him, owned him, but chose instead to stand beside him. Who watched him break apart and helped him rebuild without trying to reshape him into something more convenient. Who sees his strength and his vulnerability as equally valuable. This alpha doesn't complete me, Boris thinks. He stands beside me while I complete myself. The fake engagement was a lie, a desperate solution to problems neither of them could solve alone. But everything that came after? The trust built in crisis, the courtship forged in honesty, the family assembled from broken pieces and fierce love. That's the truest thing Boris has ever known. Thank you all for being here, Boris begins, and his voice is steady, strong, completely his own. Theo's hand finds his, visible to everyone, a public declaration of partnership. And Boris, who spent 20 years not knowing who he was, finally understands, he's exactly who he's always been. He just needed the right people to help him remember. The applause rises, and Boris smiles. This is just the beginning.